Mass media is getting hyper bullish around Bitcoin again, and this does make me worry to a degree. Michael Saylor was interviewed again at CNBC, and he really gets very softball questions, as in, tell us what are the potential tailwinds for Bitcoin? How might it go up? Now, simply just look at this screenshot, right? Bitcoin hovers at 2-month high. Lots of very bullish exposure. Now in this video, we're first gonna watch that interview. It does have a quite nice summary of why Bitcoin is going up in the last weeks. But on top of that, we are also going to look at a strategy how we can generate outsized performance above just buying and holding Bitcoin. And that's by using the MicroStrategy stock when it tends to be at a lower bound relative to Bitcoin. So there's a pretty stable trading range when you look at MicroStrategy denominated in Bitcoin. You can buy this low and sell this high and then outperform Bitcoin regularly. Because as we all know, MicroStrategy holds a lot of Bitcoin, and so the correlation between Bitcoin and MicroStrategy is very high. But it's not perfect, and it gives us opportunities for trading. But before all of this, let's first watch this interview. It's 4 minutes, very well spent.
Is co-founder and executive chairman at MicroStrategy. Michael, good to have you with us. You're bullish on Bitcoin. Are we looking at a Bitcoin-centric future?
I think so. I think you've got 4 presidential candidates endorsing Bitcoin. That's unprecedented in the history of the United States. And you've got BlackRock, Fidelity, Citadel, and Charles Schwab, Credit Agricole, Banco Santander, and Deutsche Bank, all announcing Bitcoin support initiatives this week. And I think that the marketplace is starting to perceive that Bitcoin is the winner. The crypto industry is going to rationalize around Bitcoin, and all of Wall Street firms and Main Street investors are going to start to get behind this new asset class.
A lot of people say, of course, regulation is going to be key. In terms of clarity, what can you tell us is happening in this space, and how much higher could Bitcoin go to?
Well, I've read thousands and thousands of pages of legal pronouncements related to the crypto industry. And the one thing that is very clear is that Bitcoin is the universally acknowledged digital commodity. And so if you're going to actually see the entire crypto market go to the next level and build around a global asset, then Bitcoin is that asset. All of the mainstream investors, the institutional investors, they want regulatory clarity, and that clarity is which of these assets is a commodity as opposed to security, and Bitcoin clearly is that commodity. And then they want to know that they can actually custody it and a safe custodian, and they can trade it on a safe exchange, and they're going to get the endorsement of the CFTC and the SEC. And that's exactly what the news of this week is about, and that's why you see the rally.
Yes, I got a rally. We've got BTC at about just over 30,000 a coin right now, Michael. And next 12 months ahead, you think are going to be pretty bullish for BTC. Could benefit from a number of tailwinds. Walk and talk us through each of these tailwinds. What is going to drive it even higher, and how much higher? Sure.
Well, the last 12 months were difficult, but 2 things that happened. We saw a meltdown of all of the the Bitcoin short sellers. They all went bankrupt or they went out of business. So anybody that allowed you to short sell Bitcoin is out of the market going forward 12 months. The wildcat crypto exchanges are coming into line, and that means it's one more or one less way to manipulate the price of Bitcoin down. I think people are looking forward to the Bitcoin halving in early 2024, where the daily supply being sold in the market by the miners will be cut in half. I think the regulatory clarity and the designation of Bitcoin as a global digital commodity and the acceptance of that throughout Europe and Asia and the United States, that's a big tailwind. FASB has been working on normalizing accounting and adopting fair value accounting for digital assets, and we expect that toward the end of this year. That's going to be a really nice tailwind for the asset. It removes a negative for a CFO of a publicly traded company from putting it on their balance sheet. And then, of course, this BlackRock news this week. BlackRock's got a 99.7% success rate in ETFs. And I think the writing on the wall there is the SEC denied the last set of ETFs because they wanted to see a regulated exchange that they could support. And when EDX came out this week, and you combine that with the BlackRock news, and you combine that with the other 5 firms that announced their own refiling of ETFs for spot Bitcoin, I think that's a really bullish sign for institutional investors. So you put all those things together, and then you know we're advancing strongly off the 200-week simple moving average, which is about 26,500 a Bitcoin. You can see that I think the worst is behind us. There's a strong base in, and there's a lot of positive milestones we can look forward to in the coming 12 months.
Now, we all know how bullish Michael Saylor on Bitcoin is. But what struck me with this interview are really the very soft questions. How high could Bitcoin go? What about regulation? Tell us about all the tailwinds that might push Bitcoin higher, and how high could it go? It's very telling that that segment was made to generate potentially more demand for Bitcoin. In general, more demand is good, but once traditional media jumps on this, you very often see the peak. Fundamentally though, if you look at the long-term holder dynamics, etc., I don't expect Bitcoin to peak, but still, we have to watch out for this. We have to continue to focus on how traditional media is treating Bitcoin. Now, at the beginning of the video, I promised you some alpha, some outperformance, how to potentially get more than just buying and holding Bitcoin. And that alpha comes in this chart. What you see over here is a very uncommon chart. It's the Bitcoin price divided by the MicroStrategy stock. So how do you get this? You go to tradingview.com and you enter BTC USD divided by MSTR. Then you press enter. And then you get this chart. And what you have here at the bottom is the relative strength index. It's not an indicator I use too often, but here for this specific strategy, it might work quite well. So this vertical line here, this is when MicroStrategy first purchased Bitcoin. So this is the relevant history. Everything before that is just pretty much unusable data, because we want to look at the history whenever MicroStrategy held Bitcoin and when the correlation between the stock and the main crypto asset was very high. It's still very high. We see that over the long term, MicroStrategy and Bitcoin more or less move in tandem. So you can buy MicroStrategy stock if you want Bitcoin exposure, right? If you don't want to buy Bitcoin directly, or you don't want to buy an ETF. We see though that sometimes Bitcoin is comparatively expensive and sometimes comparatively cheap. And so you could try to ride those waves, right? When the thesis is that Bitcoin and MicroStrategy continue to move pretty much in tandem. You can trade these extremes. So you could buy Bitcoin over here and sell it over here, swap here the capital to MicroStrategy, ride the potential MicroStrategy rally, take that outperformance of MicroStrategy, then sell the stock again and buy back into Bitcoin. And you can do this several times. You can just eyeball this, but you can also instead use the RSI, right? And you could say, okay, I put my limit maybe at what historically worked somewhat well, maybe 40 or so. So this would be when you'd be buying Bitcoin because Bitcoin is comparatively cheap. And then you would be selling Bitcoin and put that capital into MicroStrategy when we are maybe at around 60. And so if we just look at this historically, right, you would be buying here, you would then be selling over here, then you would be buying again over here. And so far, we didn't see a massive outperformance of Bitcoin versus MicroStrategy again, right, since middle of April of this year. But yeah, this is a potential way to ride mispricings. And the magnitude of these moves is quite large. So look at this. This is an outperformance of Bitcoin versus MicroStrategy of 50%. If you then move this the other way around, right now in this part of the cycle, you hold MicroStrategy stock instead of Bitcoin, you would again outperform by another 30%. And so you just ride this up and down. It's not something that I personally do, but I think it's a valid way to trade these inaccuracies. There is, of course, more influences on MicroStrategy than just the Bitcoin price. There is still the underlying business. But since MicroStrategy took on so much debt just to buy Bitcoin, the Bitcoin price is definitely the biggest of the influences on the price. So when there's enough of a divergence, it might make sense to take advantage of this short term. So those are the kinds of strategies I in general like. I like strategies that have a fundamental reasoning behind this and that also historically only worked well in the past. The fundamental idea here is that Bitcoin and MicroStrategy stock should be highly correlated. They should be more or less trade with a stable relation to one another. They shouldn't diverge. And when you then look at this historically, you actually do see exactly that. And so you can then apply this. It's better than just drawing random lines and hoping that the price stays in these random lines, right? When there's no real reason why it should. And so we discuss all kinds of approaches, all kinds of news also in Telegram. So in case you do have Telegram and you're not yet part of the channel, feel free to simply search for Bitcoin Strategy channel within the Telegram app. There's also a link down below. Looking forward to chat with you, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.